How do you create forms in Spring MVC and handle form submission and validation? How do you implement cross-fields navigations like password and confirm password should match? These are the questions we intend to answer in this session. This tutorial is part of multipart series where we implement secure Spring web app that enables users to sign in via external providers like Google and Github. We'll explore how to deploy our app to various cloud providers and how to persist our users to a database. Our application currently has 2 hard-coded users and no way for new users to sign in. Our goals for this session is to create sign-up form. We'll also implement password change functionality for existing users, which will enable us to explore form submission and validation features in Spring MVC web framework. We'll be using Timeleaf templating engine to structure our HTML pages and fomanticUI CSS framework to stylize them. If you're not familiar with Timeleaf, I've created Up to Speed with Timeleaf tutorial you can check out. Let's start working on our sign-up form. In our app user controller, we'll create a new get mapping for sign-up form. So we'll call it show sign-up. It will be a get mapping on sign up. App user controller has request mapping of users, so the full path will be /user/signup. And we'll return app user sign up HTML, which we'll create. So in our app user directory, we'll create an HTML file, call it signup. I've prepared HTML for the sign-up form in advance, so we'll paste it in our new div, and we'll call the div sign-up fragment. And then we'll replace our whole HTML with fragment, our skeleton fragment that we've been working on in a past session, and it's in fragments, layout, skeleton, and the fragment name is layout. We'll say that the active menu is home, and then that the content is in this file, sign up fragment. And we want the sign up to be publicly available, so we'll go to our security configuration and say that, so the full path is user, sign up is permitted to all. Next we need to add this sign up href to our buttons in our application. There's one button in the menu, sign up button. So we'll say data th href is equal to sign up, user sign up, and we'll remove the disabled. The button will be enabled now, and there's one sign up button in the login page in case the user doesn't have an account yet. We will enable him to sign up. If we restart our application now and go and refresh, we'll notice that the sign up button is active now and it leads to our sign up form. If you go to our login page, the sign up button there also goes to our sign up form. Our form doesn't do anything right now, it's just plain HTML, so let's make it post again to a sign up. We'll create post mapping with the URL of sign up, and we'll make it post back to the same page. So we'll say string sign up, we'll return redirect to user sign up, and we need to go to our sign up HTML, go to our form and say that data th action is so user sign up. Method is already post. So let's restart. We should now have a form that can sign up to itself. Let's restart, sign up, and we see it's working. fomanticUI CSS framework that we are using has the toast features, which enables us to post short-lived messages to our users. That's the ideal way to show that form submission has been successful, for example. In this example, we see that the toast has multiple attributes that we could use. The one that are interesting to us will be title, message, and class. And we want the ability to show toast from anywhere in our application, so we'll include this code in our skeleton. Let's go back to our application and we'll add global toast support. For that, we'll create a new package, call it fomanticUI, since it's a fomanticUI feature, and we'll create a new record, call it toast. The record will have title, message, and class. Since class is a reserved name, we'll call it class. And we'll create a couple of static helper methods. So we'll say public static toast, one for successful toast, so we'll say success. It will return new toast, and it will have title and message as an attribute, and it will return so title, message, and the class will be success. And we can do the same for warning and error. These are the classes that fomanticUI offers for toast, and this will be error. So now let's go back to our app user controller and test it out. On our post mapping, we'll add a model, and we'll say that, sorry, not a model, but a redirect attributes. So because we are redirecting and we want to add a flash attribute for toast. And it will say it's toast, success, new title will be user sign up, and the message will be success for now, just to test it out. And in order to show the toast, we need to go back to code that toast needs to run, and we'll go to our skeleton, so to our skeleton HTML, and on the bottom page we'll say a new script tag that will only be displayed if toast is in the model, so data th if toast, this script will be displayed, and we want to say that timelif should inline the variables because we want to pass the title, message, and the class inside. So we'll say inline JavaScript, and we'll paste the code from the timelif from the Fomantic site. And for title, we'll say to pass in the values, we'll use comments and then double square brackets, and this will be toast title, then toast message, and toast class. And now if we restart, go back to our application, refresh, sign up. If we post, we see a toast message pop up. Next, we need to add sign up form to our app user controller. So we'll go to our app user controller and create a new record, call it sign up form. It will have username and password attributes. And we'll need to add an instance of the sign up form to our get mapping. So we'll say to add an instance, we'll say model attribute sign up form, and we'll receive a filled instance when we post. So we'll say sign up form. And next we need to go to our sign up HTML, and we'll assign data.th object to the form. So we'll bind the form to an object. The object is the newly created sign up form, and the fields will bind with data.th field, and the field bind with asterisk. So this will be a username field. And we'll have a password field. And we can go back to our app user controller and display a log message about the form being posted. So we'll say posted sign up form. And this will be sign up form. Let's try out our sign up form. We'll copy the log message to try to find it later in our logs. And we'll go to our application, refresh, and input some dummy values. Try to search for the message, and there we have it. Our sign up form is being correctly posted. To mark that our form submission should be valid, we'll need to add a valid annotation on our post mapping. Now we can start our application again, and we'll try to post with, let's say, password of 1 character. So we'll refresh, username, password 12, let's say, and we see our application breaks and redirects us back to our login page. Let's go back to our application and try to find what the issue is in our logs. We see an exception being thrown, and the reason is when it tries to post to an error. So our form submission caused an error, and since we don't have an error URL public, we've got an access denied exception, and it redirected us to our login page. So first what we'll need to do is in our security configuration allow everyone to see an error page, and Spring offers a feature to create in our templates error HTML, and in case any error being thrown, whatever it is, this page will be displayed. So we'll create an error HTML, and let's put it in a div, let's say error content, and I prepared some HTML, and then we'll replace the skeleton layout. So we'll go into our fragments, skeleton HTML layout fragment. We'll say that the active menu is home and that the content is error content. So in this file ID of error content. Error content. This is a misspell. And now if we restart and go back to our application, refresh and try to sign up, we'll see an error page. Oops, this is embarrassing. We had an error. Another feature that Spring offers is the ability to customize certain error messages for certain error codes. So in order to do that, just to give an example, we would need to create a directory, call it error. And then in this directory, we would create a file with the appropriate HTTP status. So we would create, let's say, HTML file, call it for 500. And we can do the same thing as with error, just change the message. To give you an example of 500 error being thrown, we could go to our security configuration and permit our user URL to all. And because our user uses attributes from our app user, so if we try to access the page unauthenticated, the application should break with a 500 error. So let's restart and go back to our application and try to access the user URL without being authenticated. And there we go, 500 error and the custom error message. Sorry, could not find the content you were looking for. Error message itself could be better and more appropriate, but you get the gist. So let's go back to our security configuration and remove permission for everyone to access our user page. Throwing generic errors when our form submission is not valid is not exactly user-friendly, and we don't want that. Instead, we'd like to leave the user on the form and inform him what the error was. So in order to do that, we'll first need to get the errors from our form submission, which we'll do by including the errors object. That's Spring Framework UI errors, and if we have any errors, we'll leave the user on the form. So we'll do that by saying that it should return app user sign up form again. And in our sign up form, we can display errors. We'll do that by including timely support for errors. So first we'd like to append the error class to our form in case we do have errors. So we'll say class append, and we'll use timely fields companion object and say if the form has any errors, then we'll append the class of error, otherwise empty class. And we can do the similar things for each field. So for our username, on the field div, we'll say if has error, and we'll pass in the field name, in this case username. We'll also append the class of error, otherwise nothing, and similarly for password. And one small correction, it should be errors, not error. And the way we display what error user made, I'll just paste in the code. Again, if field username has error, we'll display red prompting pointing fluid label, and the error for appropriate field we'll get with data th errors timely attribute asterisk and then field name. And then we can do the similar thing for our password. So in our div for password, we'll say that we want to display the error in case there is any error for password. Let's restart our application and try to submit an invalid form. So we'll go to our sign up and say 112, and this time we get an error message underneath our password field. The size must be between 3 and integer max value. We can customize our message by going to the app user controller and providing a custom message. Let's say password must have a minimum of, and we can get the minimum size by using curly braces min characters. This will be 3 characters in this case, but in case, let's say we change this to 4, then it will be 4. So let's restart and go back to our application, go to our sign up form again and try to submit invalid value. And there we have our custom message. Password must have a minimum of 4 characters. Even if we submit valid values for our username and password fields, our post mapping controller method doesn't do anything right now, so we'll need to work on that next. If we go back to our application, to our app user service, we'll remind ourselves that it implements user details service. If we go back to this interface, we'll see that it has one method, load user by username. And if we have a look at implementations of user details service, we'll see that one of the implementations is UserDetailsManager. UserDetailsManager has multiple methods for changing password, creating user, deleting user, etc. So we'll make our app user service implement UserDetailsManager to provide this extended set of functionality. So let's go back to our app user service, and instead of user details service, we'll implement UserDetailsManager. And we don't need this. So we'll implement methods, and let's start implementing them. First, we'll implement user exists. So we'll go to our user's hash map and say, does it contain a key of username? Change password, we'll leave empty for now. We'll implement this later. Deleting a user, we'll say if user exists, by username, we'll go to our user's hash map and remove it from our user list. Our update user, we'll just throw new unsupported operation exception for now. Create user, so this takes in the user details and creates a user. What we'll do is we'll call our create user for our app user, and we'll create an app user from the user details. So we'll say, let's just put this on the empty lines, and we'll say that the provider is our app, username is username given by the user, password is password given by the user, and authorities are also the one given by the user, and that should be it. We might also need another method, helper method, to create a new user from username and password from our form submission. So we'll say public void also create user. It will have username and password. And what it'll do, it will create user details user, and we'll say user builder build, and we'll create, so a username will be username, password will be passwords given in the parameter but encoded, and the authorities will be just collections empty list. Now, if we already have a user in our users map, so if user exists, then we can throw new illegal argument exception. We'll say, let's say, string format user %s already exists, and we'll give the user username. We can now use our modified app user service in our app user controller. So first we'll say that our controller is value, Lombok value, and we'll auto import app user service. And in our form submission, we'll say that after the form submission was valid, we'll try to call the service. So we'll say app user service create user by username and password. So sign up form username and sign up form password. If this succeeds, then we'll display this flash message that user was created. So we'll say user sign up form username was created, and we'll redirect to login page so the user can try to log in. And if we catch some exception, we'll say that will return a redirect to app user sign up, so to the same form. And we'll also display error toast message, so we'll also display a toast, but this time with error type, and we'll say that user already exists. I've noticed mistakes, so this should be actually a URL, so user sign up, not the HTML page. And for the error message, we can display that user already exists because that's the only exception for now, but we could also display exceptions message. So that should be it. If we restart, we can try to sign up again. Let's refresh, sign up. Let's sign up with Ben 456. Minimum 4 characters, okay, 4, 5, 6, 7. And then we see that user Ben was created. We are redirected to the login form. And if we try to log in with Ben 4, 5, 6, 7, it works. We are redirected, we are logged in and redirected to users page. And let's try to create a user that already exists. So we'll go to sign up and try to create a new user bill. And we see that we get an error message. User sign up, user bill already exists. Let's work on password change feature next. Our user page has tab for user info as well as tab for password changed, where I've already prepared HTML form we'll use. User will have to import their old password and confirm their new password to proceed with the change. Let's first wire up our password change form, so when the user submits, it's redirected back to the users page password tab. If we get back to our application, to our user HTML, we'll see there's two parts to activating a tab. First, there's the menu item, and second, there's the segment that needs to be activated when the menu item is pressed. One way we can activate an item is to have a model attribute, let's say tab, and to class append active class depending on the value of this model attribute. So let's do that. We'll remove the active class from our item. We'll say class append. The value is if the tab value is equal to, let's say, user, then we'll append the class of active. Otherwise, just an empty class. And we'll need to do the same for our user segment. And for our password, we'll say the tab name is pass. And again, we'll need to do the same for our password segment. And we can remove the active, hard-coded active from our user segment. Let's wire up our form next so that it posts back to itself, to the password tab. So we'll say method is post, and the action is, let's say, to user/password. And we'll need to create that next. So we'll go to our app user controller. Underneath our show user info, we'll create a post mapping to password. User is already root mapping for our controller, so password will be appended. And we'll say string change password. It for now will return redirect to the user page. And in order to make the password tab active, we'll need to say for redirect attributes, we'll add flash attribute for our tab. We'll say that its value is pass. And in order to make it obvious what's going on, we can also add a toast. Let's say toast success, change password. And the title will be, let's say, password. If we restart our app and refresh, try to log in with Bill, let's say 321, and we have required fields on our password. So if we click change password, we are redirected back to the password tab and we see our little toast. One limitation of HTML forms is that they support only get and post method. If you work with REST APIs, you'll know that there are also other verbs like delete, put, patch. We are changing existing data, so more appropriate here would be patch instead of post HTTP method. Fortunately, Spring offers hidden method filter that will enable us to use patch mapping. Let's go back to our application properties, and the first thing we'll need to do is enable the hidden method filter. And then we'll need to go to our user HTML, to our form. The method stays post, but in one of the inputs we'll add is a hidden input with the name of underscore method, and the value will be patch. And in our app user controller, instead of the post mapping, now we can use patch mapping. And if we save and restart, there shouldn't be any change in our application. So let's test it out. We'll log in with Bill. And if we submit our change password, we see everything working exactly the same. Let's create a backing object for our form. So in our app user controller, we'll create a new record, call it change password form, and it will have three attributes: old password, password, and password confirm. Let's set up some validation rules for our fields. So we'll say not blank. Now these are passwords, and if you need to implement password strength rules, like the password needs to have at least one uppercase letter, one number and one symbol, what you could do is you could use a pattern validation and give the regular expression that the password needs to match. But we won't do this now, just so you know it's there. Now another thing we need to implement is that our password and password confirm need to match. Let's discuss how we do that. One way you could implement validations on your object is to implement Spring's validator interface. So for example, if you had a person class, you would create a person validator that implements a validator, and in a support method you would say that your validator supports person class, and in validate method you could reject an object if some of your validation rules are not satisfied. We won't implement a validator interface. Instead we'll use a little workaround for our simple password should match check. We'll use the fact that assert true validation that is normally used on Boolean attributes can also work on methods whose names start with is and does not need to have a backing attribute. So what we need to do is create a method that returns a Boolean and whose name start with is, and we'll name it, let's say, is same passwords. We'll implement our checks in those methods and we'll put a validation of assert true in there with the message, let's say, passwords should match. And our validation will be first that our passwords are not null, so our password is not null. Our password confirm is not null, and that they match. So our password should be equal to our password confirm. This validation will behave as though we have the same password field and will throw a field error if check fails. Since we don't have this field in our HTML form, we'll display error message underneath our form as a global error. Let's use our change password form. We'll need to add it as a model attribute in our show user info. And we'll also need to add it in our change password patch method. We'll say that it needs to be a valid change password form, and we'll receive errors in our method. So again, errors, if we have any errors, we'll need to return to our form. So we'll say return to our form. Our form is at app user, and we'll need to return to the appropriate tab. Since this is not a redirect, we'll need to include a model, and we'll say that our tab attribute is pass. So if we don't have errors, we'll try to call our app user service to change the password. For the old password, we'll give the value given in our form. Same for our new password. If this change was successful, we'll just, let's say we can add a toast attribute of success that the password was changed. And we'll redirect to user. And if we have any errors or exceptions, sorry, then we can redirect back to the user. Our flash attribute will be toast, and we'll display not flash attribute but a tab attribute, and we'll display an error message, and we'll just pass in the exception message. We don't have our change password implemented, so we'll do that next. First, we'll need to get a hold of the user that's trying to change the password, so the current user. In order to do that, we'll get the current authentication object. Authentication has getPrincipal method, which is our app user. So this will be our app user, current user, and we'll need to cast it. And we'll use our password encoder to check do the password match. So we'll need to give our raw password our old password, and we'll need to give the current password. And if they don't match, then we'll throw new illegal argument exception. Old password is not correct, let's say. And if they do match, then we'll get a hold of our users from our user hash map. We'll say our app user, so our current user get username, and we'll change its password to new encoded password. So password encoder encode new password. Next, we'll need to go to our user's HTML, and we'll need to bind our form to our object. So the object is, let's go to our app user controller. The object was app user controller. The object was change password form. The object name. So it's change password form. The input is binded to, so this is all passwords should be binded to data th field is old password. The password should be binded to field password. And the confirm password should be binded to field password confirm. We'll also need to display errors, so we'll use our sign up form, and we'll go to our form. First, we'll need to class append, so we can use a similar construct. So for our form, we'll class append error if there's any errors, and we'll use the same field has errors. So for our old password, we'll display if old password has errors, we'll display its errors. For our password, similarly. And again for our password confirm. Oops. Now another thing we have is our validations for do the password match, and for that we'll display an error. Just let's remind ourselves our validation was called same password, so we'll need to say like we have the error on the field same password. And another thing we need to do is if we have error on an appropriate field, we'll need to append an error class to the field. So let's go to our old password field. We'll append an error class if we have error on old password field. And in our password field, similarly, so this will be password, and this will be password confirm. Now we can restart and test our changes. So if we refresh our application, log in with Bill 321, if we put a faulty old password, we get an error, password should match, so let's put a matching password. We get an error, old password is not correct because we used the wrong password. If we use, again we saw this, if password and confirmed password don't match, password should match. And let's input 123456, 123456, and we enter the correct old password. Password was changed, we were redirected to the users page. We can log out, and if we log in, this time we'll use 123456, the new password. And it was successful. Nice. This will conclude our session on forms submission and validation in Spring. In the next session, we'll show how to test our forms. And we are still using in-memory storage for our users, which we'll replace with persistent database storage. Till next time, happy coding!